Part 6. It is finished, Ains-sama, Albedo said, her helmet held at her waist. Ains nodded as he heard this. Now, there were no witnesses to Shaltier's identity. With his armor gone, Ains felt quite at ease as he replied. Good work. How about the recovery of the bodies? I have already asked Mayor to send them back to Nazarick. I see. Well then, that problem's taken care of. Sadly, they were killed by the vampire, so we, the survivors, must continue pressing on. Understood. Then, Ains-sama, what is that trembling creature which cowers under your cloak? Ains turned, and found that as expected, although it was quite hard to understand why such a large creature would do such a thing, Hamsuke was clinging to his cloak. Its large beady eyes were moist, and its fur stood in terror. Of course, it was Albedo which it feared. Think of it as my pet. I have named it Hamsuke. What? That thing actually has the position coveted by all the denizens of Nazarick. Hamsuke. This is Albedo, my faithful servant who rules my domain of the great underground tomb of Nazarick. In other words, she is your boss. Go, introduce yourself to her. This lowly one is, as my lord has already said, known as Hamsuke. I place myself in your care, Albedo Dono. Pleased to meet you, Hamsuke. All right, introductions are over. From now on, I will be going onward with Albedo. Nabril, return to Nazarick with Hamsuke and Mare. And pay attention to the object I put in your mouth. Yes. Nabril's reply was quite energetic. Hamsuke swirled the object it had received in the graveyard within its mouth, and it asked Nabril in a garbled way. Ununderstood, my lord. And this thing is really noisy. I have an important question to ask. Quiet down in there. Then, this one has a question to ask. Nabril Dono, will this one be in danger? Will this one be eaten up? Since you are now Ains-sama's pet, you will not be eaten without authorization. I will inform everybody. There is no need to worry. Ains's face did not move, but he was smiling. It would seem that letting him travel together in Erantal had improved their relationship. All right, then let's go, Albedo. Understood. As Nabril and Hamsuke watched, Ains and Albedo headed toward Shaltier's location. Yes, Ains-sama. The corpses of those men reminded me of the words you spoke to me in the throne room. Shall we recover the corpses of the man and woman which you eliminated last night, Ains-sama? Well, about that. Just as he was about to repeat what he had told Nabril last night about. We need to pin the blame on them as the masterminds of this incident. Albedo continued speaking and interrupted him. They might have learned something while fighting you, Ains-sama. Since there is magic which can bring the dead back to life, the best course of action would have been to immediately recover the corpses. Or was there some special reason for doing otherwise? Ains's breathing stopped. No, he had not need to breathe in the first place. Albedo had hit the nail on the head. Crap. Resurrection magic existed in this world. In other words, dead men could tell tales better than what any autopsy would say. Ains recalled the events of that night. He thought about his real identity, the name of Nazarick, and Nabril's abilities. That man and woman knew it all, especially that woman. This was too fatal of a mistake to be written off with the word mistake. All he could do was hope that nobody could use resurrection magic. But according to the information gained from the Sunlight Scripture, there were people within the slain theocracy who could use such magic. In addition, there was a high chance that top-ranked, adamantite adventurers possessed spells like that, and high-ranking officials in a country might secretly command people who were capable of such magic. If that were the case, the higher-ups in Erantal would look for people to use magic on him once they concluded that the deceased possessed such important information. Given that what they had done would have shaken Erantal, it would be natural for said higher-ups to want to know more. Ains felt his non-existent heart beating at a breakneck pace. What should I do now? It went without saying that he had to recover the bodies as quickly as possible. However, who should he send? Ains had told Narberl not to bother with the corpses. Should he publicly tell her that was a mistake? No, I shouldn't say anything. He should avoid saying anything that might lower their faith to him further, as long as he did not know why Shaltir had betrayed him. He had to remain calm in a situation like this. Ains now knew why the superiors in his company were unwilling to admit their mistakes. With a prayer in his heart, he made a decision. Indeed, that is correct. However, I do have a special reason for leaving those bodies be. Calm yourself. Everything dances within the palm of my hand. The matter of Shaltir aside. I see. As expected of you, Ains-sama. I see you have already anticipated the developments I had in mind. It seems I have spoken too much, and I apologize for that. Come to think of it, why did you not use resurrection magic at all, Ains-sama? It would allow you to question dead humans in the light while gathering information. A very off-key squeak of surprise escaped Ains. Did I not mention it? Then, have you heard of Demiurge's healing experiments? Yes, I have. Sever all 4 limbs. Heal them with magic. Those experiments, right? Indeed. Then, another question for you. Do you know where a resurrection spell has to be applied? Is it not on the corpse? I don't think so. At least, I don't think so, no. Albedo went silent alongside Ains, and then her eyes sparkled. Ah, it seems I misspoke. Ains-sama, you are correct. It is not on the corpse, but the soul. Indeed. In Demiurge's experiments, the severed limbs vanished and grew from the body once more. Now, when you cast a spell on the soul, what will happen to the body? In YGGDRASIL, one could choose to come back to life at one of 4 locations when casting an XP-Dre resurrection spell. The first was at the corpse itself. The second was at the entrance of the dungeon or other location. The third was in a nearby safe town. And the fourth would be at a designated respawn point within a guild base or other stronghold. That being the case, where would people in this world come back to life when resurrection magic was cast on them? The scenario which Ains most wanted to avoid was the fourth kind, coming back to life at a designated home point. If Negan came back to life in the slain theocracy, Ains would have essentially resurrected an enemy, filled him full of useful information, and then kindly released him back into the wild. This was why he could not conduct experiments with resurrection magic, but in return it had led to these undesired consequences. I see, so that's how it is. We must take note of these things. As expected of you, Ains-sama, I am awed by your keen insight. As he watched Albedo lower her head in admiration, Ains immediately shook his head and replied, "Pay it no heed. Although, I do need to find a place to conduct an experiment like that." Then, once we're ready, we'll set out. Under Albedo's guidance, Ains strode into the forest. The 2 of them reached a large clearing within the woods. One could say this scene was filled with a rustic charm, but in the middle of it stood something that was completely out of place here, a person in a suit of crimson full plate armor. It was a fantastic sight as it glittered under the sunlight, but the stink of gore it gave off ruined the atmosphere. It was Shaltir. She looked exactly like what he had seen on the crystal monitor, right down to her seemingly unchanged posture. For a moment, Ains wondered if he was still looking at her image. However, it felt real enough. The reason was that was the stench of blood carried to him by the wind. Ains breathed in and out repeatedly. Of course, his body could not breathe, so he was just going through the motions, but perhaps he felt something which might have led to those breaths. Shaltia, Ains said to her. He felt that his voice should have been stern and commanding, and yet the words he had spoken were hoarse and quiet and pathetic. Yet, there was no response. Before he called out to Shaltia again, Ains carefully sized her up. Shaltia was not ignoring him. Rather, her crimson eyes were open and vacuous, giving the impression that there was no consciousness there. Albedo, who was standing beside him, grew furious at Shaltia's attitude. Shaltia, not only do you not have an explanation for your deeds, but you compound it with rudeness to Ains-sama. Albedo, shut up. Keep quiet. Do not move. Do not approach Shaltia. Ains's harsh words stopped Albedo in her tracks as she was about to advance on Shaltia. This was a tone he very rarely took with the NPCs made by his friends, but on this occasion, it could not be helped. That was how shocked Ains was by Shaltia's current condition. Could this be? Is it even possible? Unbelievable. Ains compared scenes from his past to the Shaltia he saw before him, and shock ran through him. At the same time, his emotion suppression kicked in, allowing him to make a calm decision and realize that the possibility he had in mind was the most likely one. Ains addressed Albedo. He wanted to share his thoughts, and by doing so, acknowledged the reality of the situation. I'm sure of it now. Shaltia is under mind control. Is this due to the reason you mentioned in the throne room, Ains-sama? I can't be sure just yet. Judging from the information supplied by the sunlight scripture and my own experience with this sort of thing, I'm certain this is some form of mind control. Of course, I don't know how or why the undead Shaltia was controlled. Could this be the result of some phenomenon unique to this world? Ains folded his arms, and carefully examined the bolt-upright Shaltia. Some mysterious person attempted to control Shaltia's mind, but something happened before that person could issue any orders. Perhaps they were struck down just as they made their move. In any case, I'm pretty sure that was what left her standing here by herself, without any orders. However, she will probably defend herself against anyone who gets too close or who attacks her. Most evil-aligned NPCs will do just that, so don't get too close. Understood. However, we will not be able to drag her back to Nazarick like this. That will be fine as long as Shaltia's attempted controller is dead, but if that person is still alive, it will be dangerous to wait here. An accurate consideration. Shaltia had been mind-controlled by something. It might be something unique to this world, something that could work on the undead. If that were the case, Ains might end up getting mind-controlled as well if he stayed here. Although this item is quite expensive, we'd best dispel Shaltia's mind control soon as possible. Ains's fingers moved. One of the rings he wore, a plain and undecorated item, glowed with a silver light and displayed 3 meteors on its face. One could say this was the mightiest ring Ains had in his possession. That is, upon seeing Albedo's puzzled expression, Ains's face, though his fleshless face could not move, was filled with a proud smile as he spoke the ring's name. This is Shooting Star, an extremely rare item that allows its bearer 3 uses of the super tier magic, Wish upon a Star. This was the gacha item that Ains had spent his year-end bonus to obtain. Among the guild members, only Ains and Yamaiko could boast ownership of such an unbelievably rare item. However, this ring was less of an ultra-rare item than a cash item, which symbolized foolishness, on account of how much money he had spent on the game in order to obtain it. The super tier spell imbued within the ring, Wish upon a Star, was one which consumed a percentage of one's XP bar to randomly generate an option for a wish. In other words, by spending 10% of one's XP bar, one could make one choice. By spending 50%, one could pick from 5 choices. There were many choices that could be made for a wish. According to online walkthroughs, there were over 200 of them. In addition, some wishes were more common than others. Thus this was a dreadful spell, which many feared would deplete their XP for nothing. Even in YGGDRASIL, where Garing levels was easy, one would still need a lot of XP to cast it, given that a magic caster need to be level 95 before learning this super tier spell. Thus, many people hesitated over whether or not to gamble their XP on this sort of thing. The choices one could make when casting Wish Upon a Star from the ring were randomly generated, much like the original spell. However, one was more likely to get useful selections, and fewer joke selections. From a certain point of view, one might say it was a better version of the spell. In addition, one would be presented with up to 10 choices to pick from, and there would be no casting time. It was worthy of being called the best cash item. Of course, it felt like a shame and a bit of a gamble to have to use a cash item like this. However, Shaltier was irreplaceable. In addition, using his own leftover XP would affect his use of other skills which drained his XP, so he had his doubts about going that route. Ains stared at his ring. Ains hoped that he would be given a choice to negate all effects on a given target. He had also thought of several other alternatives, but that was the most direct option which came to mind. Very few people would pick that wish since it would also negate all positive effects. Thus, Ains laughed at himself for thinking of it. Then, "Hear me, O ring. I wish." Of course, he did not need to speak those words to activate the item. However, he was driven by his desire to be granted the most optimal choice from over 200 available options, hence his cry. It was like how one might shout during a tense moment in a game or over a throw of the dice. Since the magic of this world seemed to operate along the same lines as YGGDRASIL, the ring should be able to remove Shaltier's mind control. Or rather, that was what Ains hoped would be the case. The scenario Ains most feared that the spell did not work did not come to pass. The ring released the magic stored within it into this world. And then the red points of light within Ains's eye sockets shrank. What is this? It felt as though new information was being entered into his mind, something along the lines of displeasure. At the same time, he felt like he had been connected to something vast, something like joy, perhaps. Many of the emotions Ains had felt while he was still human washed over him. Once the ripples of emotion faded away, Ains realized that Wish Upon a Star worked differently here than it did in YGGDRASIL. When Ains had first learned of Nefarious talent, he had idly wondered if he could steal it with Wish Upon a Star. Now, he realized that he could have done it. In this world, Wish Upon a Star was a spell that would grant its casters wishes. Although it would still expend XP, Wish Upon a Star was now a spell that could make the impossible possible. In addition, by sacrificing 5 levels 500% of his XP bar one could make even greater wishes come true. With that in mind, Ains felt certain that he could dispel the magical effects on Shaltier. As triumph surged through him, Ains shouted, "Dispel all effects on Shaltier." A beat later, the lights in Ains's eyes grew steadily larger. What is this? Albedo realized that something had changed when she saw Ains's agitated reaction. She uneasily asked, "What's the matter, Ains-sama?" Ains had no time to answer. He was recalling the news he had absorbed from various walkthrough sites, his own long experience with YGGDRASIL, then combing them with what he had learned ever since coming to this world. The most important parts of that was the information concerning the use of Wish Upon a Star, the spell, which had completely overturned Ains's accumulated knowledge. Anxiety and anger filled Ains as he came to a conclusion. However, he could feel something else even through the emotion suppression that should have kept him calm. Fear. Ains shouted pathetically. We're falling back. Albedo, over here. We're retreating now. Why yes. Ains cast his teleportation spell, and in the next moment, a beam of earth filled his eyes. Though he was now safe at home, Ains ordered in a panic. Albedo, watch out for anyone who might have teleported after us. Yes. Albedo drew her weapon and stood by Ains's side. Ains raised both his hands, taking a stance to deal with anything which might come. As time passed, Ains allowed himself to slowly relax. Albedo too stood down from her ready stance, back into her normal posture. Damn it. After he calmed down, he was filled with furious anger. His emotional peaks were automatically cut out after becoming undead, but even though they were suppressed, the anger welled up inside him once more. Damn it. Damn it. Damn it. Ains kicked at the ground over and over again. Since Ains's physical strength was far greater than normal, each kick sent forth a massive quantity of soil. If it had not rained just a few days ago, the surrounding area might have been engulfed in a huge cloud of dust. Even so, it could not quench Ains's anger. Ains-sama, please, be at peace. Ains noticed the undercurrent of fear in Albedo's voice, and he finally realized that his behavior was not fitting of an absolute ruler. He swiftly calmed himself down, forcefully exhaling the breath he did not possess. It felt as though he was expelling the fiery wrath consuming him through that breath. Forgive me. I seem to have lost my senses for a moment. Pay that unsightly scene no heed. Please do not say that. However, I am grateful that you took my suggestion to heart, Ains-sama. If it is your wish that I forget ever seeing that, then I shall remove it from my mind. However, what happened? Did I displease you, Ains-sama? If you are willing to tell me, I shall strive not to let it happen again. My anger was not directed at you, Albedo. It was because I learned that my wish did not come true, even after activating the power of the ring. Seeing how Albedo remained silent, Ains knew that his explanation was insufficient, so he continued. There is only one thing which can trump the power of the super tier spell, wish upon a star. Perhaps earlier, he might have thought it was interference from something in this world, but Ains was confident that it was not the case. This was because he had sensed it as he activated the ring. It can't be. That would be. Yes, Albedo. There is only one thing which can do that. The power of world-class items. There were only 200 of these items in YGGDRASIL, and not even guild weapons or divine class items could compare to them. The power of world-class items was such that even controlling the undead who were immune to mental effects would be a piece of cake. Just then, Albedo thought of the guardians outside Nazarick, and how they might become targets. He rebuked himself for not thinking of this possibility, and then Ains ordered Albedo. Albedo, recall all the guardians from the outside world immediately. We must verify if they have been controlled like Shaltia. Head to the throne room without delay. After that, we shall proceed to the treasury. End chapter.